Steve Jobs said there are three things every audience wants. They want to learn something, and they want to learn it from you as the speaker because you are the subject matter expert. They want the speaker to do well, and they want to be engaged. This rings so true to any kind of presentation you give. I don't care if you're giving a presentation to the board or a keynote or a TED Talk. No audience wants a snooze fest. Stay tuned today on Moxie Talk while I unpack the E of our power method, engage your audience. Hi everyone, I'm Thea Fastbinder and welcome to Moxie Talk, where I help you find your voice, share your message, and lead with confidence. Today I will be unpacking the E of my power method, engage the audience. But before I do that, please make sure to hit that alert button if you are watching us on YouTube. And if you enjoy this video, make sure to like it, share it with a friend, and subscribe to our channel. Neuroscience studies show that novelty, or presenting information in an unexpected way, is an effective strategy to keep someone's attention because it triggers the release of dopamine, which is our chemical that's associated with pleasure and rewards in the brain. So we reviewed the dopamine response a little bit in some previous videos, but now we're moving on to the E of my power method, which stands for engage the audience. And this means leveraging tenets of behavioral science and of neuroscience to make sure you surprise and delight your audiences, even if you are presenting the most dry information. Now, neuroscience offers a slew of other insights that can help your speaking capabilities. Think about, for a second, all of the lousy PowerPoint presentations you've probably sat through in the last few months. A subject matter expert gets up in the front of the room or logs into the virtual meeting and reads bullets from their slide, talks about the bullets, and then repeats this process with the remaining bullets on every slide. And they do this for the next 51 slides. Is anyone else in the audience thinking, shoot me now? Do these speakers honestly think that their audience is going to pay attention for the whole slide, much less all 51 slides? So if you are ready to leverage some neuroscience and set those snore-inducing lectures aside and make your presentations engaging and interactive, I am going to unpack three of my favorite audience engagement techniques that work both in the virtual world and in-person presentations. Technique number one is to tell stories and use metaphors. Try to make your presentation or your speech relatable to your audience by using real examples, case studies, creative metaphors, and stories. Now, metaphors and stories are central to the way our memory works. A great story sticks in your attendees' minds much longer than charts, symbols would do this. And they are basically mental shorthand. Now, why is this? Because when you tell a story, your audiences engage with you because their brain is starting to secrete all these really great feel-good hormones like dopamine, which is our memory hormone. You might not have known that. And oxytocin, which is the hormone that mothers and babies release. It's our bonding hormone. So you can take an abstract concept and make it real. Along these same lines, you can provide an example. You don't need to go all Shakespeare-like in order to get your audience to secrete these hormones. Often just a real-life example will do. Here's another idea in the same category as stories, but a little different. It's a great idea to share someone's testimonial. Now, whether you tell an individual story or invite them to share it or play a video of their testimony, you're tapping into the power of a special kind of story. This is called social proof, and there is nothing like social proof to add to your credibility. Think about it. You all know those commercials on TV that try to solve world hunger. Most of the people that contribute to these don't contribute money to solve world hunger. They contribute because they heard a story about Carmen, a hungry child from Bolivia. Stories show us a really bad problem versus telling us one. Here's one example. Have you ever been on Maui's road to Hana? I have. And all along the road, instead of just stating danger, stay off the edge of the falls because they're very dangerous, they have real stories of people that have fallen over the edge of the falls. Now, which do you think is going to keep people away from the dangerous edge of the falls more? Next, here are some examples of short ways to show, not tell. You could say, PB&J sandwiches are good. Or you could say, I once traded my favorite action figure for a PB&J sandwich. Or, my grandmother drives really poorly. Versus, my grandmother once drove her car into her own mailbox. You get the picture, right? Technique number 2 is to ask effective questions. Try using inclusive framing by using effective questions of the audience during the presentation. Ask your questions in a way that most audience members would be able to respond to them. That is what inclusive questions do at their best. Inclusive questions are great for building a shared identity and community among your audience. When you ask inclusive questions, you don't put people on the spot, and instead you make them feel competent and like they're contributing to your presentation. So here's an example of an inclusive question. Tell me about your most recent shopping experience. This is something that everyone in the audience can respond to. Notice that I'm not using any superlative language there. A prompt like, tell me about the best meal you've ever had, may be harder for your audience to answer because they're going to be caught up in trying to think about what is the best meal. Was that the best meal or was that the best meal? Versus, tell me about a good meal you've had. So if your presentation focuses on the benefits to the audience, ask them to confirm the benefits that are important to them. If you are focusing on a solution to a problem in your presentation, ask the audience for their solution to the problem. This is inclusive questioning. Now, your question could be a rhetorical question, but it's more effective to ask questions and solicit some responses from the audience. Not only will you fully engage the people who respond to your question, but everyone else will be paying attention too. The most engaging use of a question is when you use it to shape the rest of the conversation. For example, what are you hoping to learn from me about this topic? So one thing to keep in mind is to be clear about whether your question is rhetorical or real. Audiences are often unsure if they should raise their hand and answer your question. So it helps to use phrases like, who here? Or who in the room if you want real responses. Now you can signal a rhetorical question with a simple phrase like, think for a moment. Some unique methods to ask questions are to have participants write down their burning questions before you begin the presentation or type them into the chat box if it's a virtual presentation. As you become more comfortable with audience participation and with asking questions, you can frame your responses to fit your point and refer back to the audience's questions and the participants' contributions later in your presentation. You'll even get to a point, if you continue to practice this, where you're able to ask follow-up questions of your audience or invite other people to react. The goal with this is to make sure that the audience feels competent and valued. One last note about asking questions as an audience engagement tool. Make sure to listen to their answers and allow time for response. In the words of Ernest Hemingway, when people talk, listen completely. Most people never listen. So if you listen, you will stand out, especially in your presentation. So whether you're communicating one-on-one, in a small group, or even with a large audience, look for opportunities to hear from people and then truly listen to the meaning of what they say. Also, make sure you leave time to acknowledge their contribution. You can recognize an audience member's contribution before moving on to the next point, or even the next participant just by saying something like good or thank you. And even if the question is rhetorical, meaning you don't expect a verbal response, you should still leave time for participants to consider the question and how they would answer. It could be just a brief pause, but it's important to let them answer. Okay, technique number 3 is polls and quizzes. Now, polls and quizzes are even easier these days with our virtual presentation. Nearly every platform from Zoom to Google Meet has the ability to enter in a poll or quiz. So try doing an online survey prior to the meeting to engage your audience before they even arrive, or have that poll up in the waiting room for your audience members who log on early to your presentation. If you're an in-person presentation and you are looking for some way to go old school, you can always do a paper survey. For in-person or for virtual, if you are speaking at a large conference or an event, real-time polling allows for instant results. One technique that works well is to get the group excited by audience response technology. This is often used to bring energy to meetings, large events, and even large trainings. Response technology can gather instant results to polls and assessment, and it can gauge your audience's awareness of what you want to focus on in the presentation, and let you know if your audience already has a clear understanding of what you're going to talk about or not. Now, you may have been to an event where they use real-time polling in the audience. You can poll anonymously to gather honest feedback, or you can allow individuals to give their answers and it pops up on that screen in front of everybody. So conducting polls not only takes a pulse of where your audience is, but it really makes them feel like they're contributing to your presentation, and it helps with energy. Now, along the same lines as polls, but with a slightly different goal, are quizzes. We can gamify even the most dry and sometimes boring information in a presentation by quizzing the audience. Now, probably as soon as you hear the word quiz, you hearken back to your school days where you got pop quizzes, right? In school, kids are afraid of pop quizzes. They hate them, but adults love a quiz that's just for fun. So rather than telling your audience a fact, ask them to raise their hand for a multiple choice or true/false answer they think is correct. And they then reveal the right answer. And you can have them do a raised hand, literally raising their hand. If it's virtual, they can use that raised hand function. So you can do this with even a virtual presentation or in person. Now, you can also throw in a quiz or a test at the beginning of your presentation or at the end of the presentation, or try introducing a quick quiz at the end of each content session. Help them recap the information that's been learned so far, and you could even offer a small prize for the winner. So if you get these quizzes throughout your presentation, you're sure to engage your audience, gamify the information, and keep them listening. Now, one quiz idea that I've seen work a lot is to ask listeners to guess certain facts or data, or leave blanks on your slides and ask them to fill in the missing words by filling in the blank. Now, this tactic is similar to a quiz, and it works well to help introduce each of your main points. When you use quizzes as an audience engagement tool, you're inviting your audience to subconsciously make the information in your presentation their own, because they are secreting all that great dopamine and they are remembering the information in a way that's fun. Everybody likes to learn in a fun environment. Now, last but not least, if you want to level up your quiz game, you can split your audience into groups to form teams. Nothing engages an audience like a little friendly competition. So I hope this video helped you think of some ways that you can engage your audience in your next presentation. If you found this video to be valuable, please make sure to share it, like it, subscribe to our channel, and check out moxieinstitute.com to learn more about what we do. Until next time, make sure to live brilliantly, lead boldly, and speak with Moxie.